Okay, so good afternoon. I just want to welcome everybody, students from all different classes, honor students and English 2 students, and also our brand new chair of the English department, Michael Nestor. Welcome him. And good afternoon. So I'm Matt Spano, co-director of the honors program, and on behalf of my co-director, Professor Donna Marie Gardner, and the entire honors board, I want to welcome you to today's lecture. This is the third in our lecture series, our MCC faculty lecture series. And the series really features scholars, in-house scholars, faculty who conducted research in their fields. It's intended as an enjoyable and collegial event, as well as academic enrichment of campus life. They told me to stick to the script, so I'm doing it. This year's lineup has featured Professor Santi Buscemi, who spoke about the cultural and literary history of Sicily. That was part of his sabbatical research. We then featured Professor Stephen Barnhart, who talked about the importance of cultural literacy in American education. And Professor Salle DelVecchio, who will speak today about her sabbatical research, dealing with new scholarship into the very identity of William Shakespeare. Professor DelVecchio is a master teacher in the English department at MCC. She's a winner of the MCC Faculty Award for Teaching Excellence, honors professor, and former coordinator of developmental writing. She's taught a wide range of courses here at Middlesex, from developmental writing to college English comp to children's literature and, of course, Intro to Shakespeare. Her Shakespeare course is a favorite among English majors and non-English majors alike. It's only 2 kinds of majors, English majors and non-English majors. And her recent creation of the Honors Shakespeare course has met with rave reviews from our finest students. What is most impressive about Professor DelVecchio is not only her scholarship, and that is indeed impressive, but her gift for conveying that scholarship to her students and igniting their passion for learning. Take a look at the photos on the MCC Honors Facebook page of the birthday bash for the Bard that the Honors Shakespeare course threw last April. And especially check out that cake. It actually looks like a folio edition of Shakespeare. It's amazing. So we're truly fortunate to have such a scholar and teacher in our company. And we have the opportunity now to listen to Professor DelVecchio share some of what she's learned from her research, again, into the identity of the greatest writer in the English language. I think I can say that. It's safe to say, William Shakespeare. So I'm honored to introduce someone whose identity could never be in question, my friend and colleague, Professor Salle DelVecchio.
Thanks, Matt. Well, on that note, I'm done. Well, the title here, to be or not to be Shakespeare. How many of you are aware that there is an authorship question with Shakespeare? Okay. For some of you, well, that's a mystery. But you see, we all like a mystery, don't we? And this is a mystery, and by the way, it's been going on for about 400 years. And it's not solved yet. And that mystery is, now let's see if I can do this. I did it. Who done it? Who wrote Shakespeare? And that is the question. This afternoon, we're going to talk a little bit, and I'm going to share with you some of my ideas about this. I'm going to show you some of the leading contenders in the field. I know some of you are here from Professor Spano's 122 class, and you're going to be looking at the quality of evidence. What we have here, what I can only do in the amount of time, is show you the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg. I can't tell you all the details. I can, however, send you forth to find those details for yourself when we're done. So it's something that you might find of interest. And we'll see. Okay, so why did I put this? It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. And of course, my natural inclination was to say, so let me entertain you. Right? Well, the reason for this is that there are some reputable professors, scholars across the country who won't even entertain the notion that there's anyone other than Stratford as the author of Shakespeare. So I just wanted to throw this out there that you don't have to accept the idea, but let's entertain it for a few minutes. Okay, and then we'll move on. Oh, first, okay. I need to thank a couple of people. Dr. Spano and Donna Marie Gardner, the directors of the honors program, and in particular, right this minute, Donna Marie Gardner for her use of the clicker, because I had a total breakdown and panic attack this morning because I didn't have a clicker and I didn't know what I would do. Kathleen Curl, who I don't think can make it right now, but she may come later, for her absolute unwavering support for my sabbatical project and for my work here, and for providing some funding for a conference that I attended. And by the way, the honors program gave me some funding too, and that's how I got to go to a really cool conference in October, and I thank them for that. Deborah Fay, who is a former student of mine, who keeps me posted on all the latest and greatest in the radical world of Shakespeare scholarship. I think I've turned her unwittingly and unwillingly and really, I didn't mean to do it. I think I've turned her into an Oxfordian, and forgive me for that. Jerry, bless your heart, you tried to make the stuff fly onto the screen, but I crashed it. I shot down those birds. They ain't flying today, but you tried. Brian Richards trained me in PowerPointing, sort of, and this is the best you're going to get. This is my first PowerPoint, so I'm just flying here by the skin of my teeth.
You don't have to point that at the screen. But
I don't.
She's pointing at me.
Well, you can walk around.
I can. Oh.
You can do anything you like.
She's on camera too.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm off.
Oh, okay.
So then, good. So then, why does it matter who wrote the canon? The canon meaning the works of Shakespeare, because whoever did it is dead. What does it matter? That is a question. Answer? Quality of the work. All right. That's good. Yeah.
Authorship is important, dead or alive.
Authorship is important, dead or alive. It is. Yes.
I think understanding the author helps you enjoy the writing even more.
It helps you to interpret.
Yeah, interpretation.
Yeah, because if Stratford wrote it, you can read it one way. If Oxford or Bacon or Sidney or whoever wrote it, you read it a different way.
Even though they're dead, they still went back in.
They did, and you know what? And it's sad that if somebody else wrote the work, it's sad that those people aren't getting recognition. Those are all very nice things. I happen to think it's money. And Jerry and I tried to download from Cabaret, money makes the world go around. Well, obviously we didn't make it. But why do I say money? Well, look at this. Here's a book, Stratford. Here's another book, not Stratford. Here's a book, Stratford. Here's a text. I'm not done. Stratford. Here's a big old book. Stratford. And there's a whole bunch left. They're all making money on the authorship question. If it's Stratford, a whole bunch of people are making a lot of money on their editions. If we find out it's somebody else, suddenly they're going to lose a lot of money. But the other folks will start making a lot of money.
Who's the real Elvis?
Well, yeah. Oh, well. Is he dead? Okay. Or is he hanging out at the edge of the galaxy? That's a great book. All right. And also, in addition to money, now see, Jerry, I just pointed. I just pointed.
You have to point it at Jerry.
And
Because I was outside the room.
you bad vibed me. And also, academic prestige. That is important. People across the country and English departments and around the world, they have a stake in this. Most English departments do teach the Stratford theory. What if that theory turns out to be wrong? Their prestige is on the line. And all those articles that they wrote suddenly evaporate or become less prestigious. And not to mention, people are still making money on movies. This is a very Stratfordian movie, Shakespeare in Love. Most of you probably saw it. Okay, I cried, but just hopelessly at the end. I was just weeping. Emmy Award winner. An Oxford movie came out in November. It didn't have quite the success. Sorry, Deb. Didn't have quite the success that Shakespeare in Love did. However, people are still making movies, and guess what? They're still producing stage and movie productions of all of Shakespeare's works. You name it, there's a movie of it or there's a version of it. I didn't even put up there some of the knockoffs, such as 12 to 10 Things I Hate About You. All of that. There's a whole bunch of movies. So, it does matter. Oh, Coriolanus, still looking for that one. Why? Well, two reasons. It's a Shakespeare movie, but also it has two really fine actors, Ralph Fiennes and Gerard Butler. Looking for that one. So anyway, and Hamlet. There's so many versions of Hamlet out there you can't keep track. So people are making money. Yeah. So people still care. So it matters. Who wrote Shakespeare? But why is there an authorship question? Why do we even question his authorship? That is a question. Yes.
Writing styles?
Writing styles such as?
Just the way the composer set in structure and the grammar, and then different time periods. Also, it was referring to different time periods. They were saying, how could one man do so much work?
Well, that is a question. How could one person do so much work? But we feel that one person may have, but it was a lot to do, especially if you're a working actor and you're also putting plays together and you're acting and you're learning those lines. Why else? Yes.
How can one person know so many different things? I mean, law and, falconry.
I think I
Fencing.
planted that. Did I plant that question with you? Because we're not there yet. But she's
really,
right. She's right. How did one person, especially a country boy, how did he know all those things? He knew what? Law.
Falconry.
Archery. He knew music, Greek, Latin, German, French. Plants. Oh, yeah.
Only.
Hmm?
A little Latin, less Greek.
A little Latin, less Greek. However, that's the Stratford boy.
Mythology?
The actual...
Myth. Yeah.
Italy.
Yeah. Italy. Oh, he was called the no, he wasn't.
He wasn't called the Italian.
No, he was not. He was not called the Italian stallion. We'll get to that.
Wasn't there also that there are other Elizabethan writers who write similar plays with similar themes, right?
It's about
Ben
four-
Jonson's.
It's about 5 slides
right,
down.
Christopher Marlowe. And there
Yeah.
was also the political question as well.
Of course, politics.
Politics.
The inner workings of the court. How did a country boy know all of this stuff? He could have, and we'll get to that, but there are some other people who did. So let's talk, yes. We know all, yeah. Pop quiz. You just answered the first one. What did the author have to know minimally? All those things. All right, so we don't have to do that one. Okay. 2. Which plays did he leave to his family? He wrote 37. A few others are in question. Which plays did he leave to his family? There's a reason you don't know the answer to that. He didn't know any. He wrote the greatest plays in history. Didn't leave them. Okay, but to anyone. Forget the family. Did he leave them to anybody? No. Move on. So then, to whom did he leave his poems?
I forget.
Oh. Nobody. That's why you forget. Nobody. It's a little interesting, right? Question 4. That's mine. I'm just because I'm a little quirky and I'm left-handed. Was Shakespeare left-handed or right-handed? Well, to help you with that, then how many of his plays are written in his hand that are existent? If any of them exist, Then we can look at the writing, not the print, not the what is it?
Script?
Yes. But we can look at how if in his hand, and we could maybe tell if he's left or right-handed. So, well, we don't know because we don't have any.
Sally, do we have a signature?
We have
We do have a second.
6 signatures. But,
Do they matter?
and guess what? Well, they're all spelled differently.
Well, I knew that.
Me too, it's to throw people off. That way, the IRS can't find you. But, but we have 6 signatures, but they're also sloppy, it's hard to tell from it. Mhm. So that doesn't help, it doesn't help. Hi, come on in. I am. In the 1623 folio edition, which is the edition, how many are written in his hand? And that's really not a good question because those were typeset. But was there anything in there that he wrote? No, I'm just going to go ahead and answer that and move on because you can see where I'm headed. Okay, this is a big one. From which public library did Shakespeare check out the Latin and Greek plays that he used as his sources?
There were no.
There were no public libraries. So, then, which private libraries, I should have made that plural, did he use? He probably should have used somebody's because he quoted a lot and he used a lot of Greek and Latin verses.
So were these plays performed at the time? Would you have just
They-
being an actor?
He could have.
Script.
He could have. Mm-hmm. They were performed, but they were his plays. They were performed.
I don't mean his
Oh,
plays, I mean
his.
source plays.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Mhm. That's a point that Stratfordians made, is that he would have been somewhat familiar either through the plays, them seeing them, or acting in them, or maybe in his grammar school being exposed to them. But the question is, which private library or libraries? Well, those were all owned by the nobles, and since he was a country boy, not a noble, there's not much chance in heck that they would have let him near their collections. Book collections were worth a lot of money. So keep that in mind. Right? So, he had a prodigious memory. He had to have a good memory because he was an actor. And you know how that worked, right? You didn't just perform one play for 6 months and that was it. You would perform a play for 2 or 3 days or a week, and then you would perform another one for 2 or 3 days or a week, and then another one for 3 weeks, and another one for 6 weeks, and then another one back. And you had to be able to keep all that straight. So you had to have a good memory to be an actor. Therefore, we can buy into a little bit of the theory that he did remember some things from his grammar school education, and that he did get some information from the plays at the time. How many contemporary memorial poems, odes, testaments were written upon his death? Just take a rough ballpark figure. Ballpark. 0. Now, by comparison, the Earl of Oxford and Bacon and Mary Sidney and all of those people all had lots of poems written upon their deaths. Stratford did not. It's just a thought. How many nobles attended his funeral? Where am I headed with this? Okay, you can sort of see where we're headed. It's strange that his death just sort of passed, and nobody of any importance, none of the major writers of the time, nobody attended his funeral. I mean, I'm sure his kids did, but it was not the event that you would think it might have been. And how many books were found in his personal library when he died?
I guess, are we headed towards 0?
Yep, we are. We're headed towards 0. No books. Okay? Yes?
So can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Regarding all of this then,
Mhm.
can we assume that during his lifetime generally recognized for what he is now?
Perhaps not as he is
As he
recognized
is.
now.
But
Perhaps
he had
not.
some degree of fame?
He had a degree of fame.
He's rich.
He absolutely had fame. That's not the question. So we'll get to that too.
So not only did he have fame, he was rich.
Well, yes, and that's a big point of what we're coming. Yeah, that's about 12 slides down. He got rich in the theater.
Right.
He got rich. He bought into. He was very frugal. He saved his money and he bought into acting troupes. He bought into the Globe Theater, and we'll get to that in a minute, but because I'm going to run out. But Stratford, it was a really big deal for him that he was able to buy one of the biggest houses in Stratford
So on top
and
of
go
all-
back sort of local boy does good.
So on top of all of these talents,
Mhm.
so he had business acumen too.
At
common
least we
sense.
know that the Stratford boy did. That's not a question.
Right.
That is not a question. So there were no books because he had no personal library. Okay? And so my question to you is, does this seem strange? That the greatest writer in the English language did not even own a Reader's Digest. Not a Cliff Note. That does not mean, and I'm not saying, that he did not write the works. I'm simply saying, why is there an authorship question? Because we know so little about the man called Shakespeare.
Did he have a contemporary
Oh, yeah,
that was
lots
as
of.
talented as he?
Oh, yeah.
Lots
Ben
of them,
Jonson.
right?
Ben Jonson, Marlowe. Oh, for heaven's
Whoa, whoa,
sake.
So who started?
As talented as he?
Yeah, that's.
Well, okay, talented.
He
Talented.
had contemporaries who were very talented. But
Okay, but okay. Talented, yes.
Or maybe not as easy to understand.
Or
No.
maybe.
no.
Was
Yeah.
there rivalry or jealousy
Oh, gosh,
among
we're getting,
us?
yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, lots of it, and I have some of that in here too, because that's another point. This question didn't just start today. It started in his own lifetime. But anyway, let's just look a little bit of a few doubters that Shakespeare is the author of the works. Sigmund Freud, I no longer believe that Shakespeare, the actor from Stratford, was the author of the works. Well, okay, it's pretty clearly stated. I'm haunted by I love this one. I'm haunted by the conviction that the Divine William is the biggest and most successful fraud ever practiced on a patient world, Henry James. That's a tough word for me as an English major, as an English teacher of Shakespeare. Fraud. I don't like it. But it's a word. Go ahead, Jack.
Vladimir Nabokov called Sigmund Freud.
I'm sorry?
Vladimir Nabokov referred to Sigmund as Sigmund Freud.
Sigmund Freud.
Sigmund Freud.
Well, but he's not the one who
Freud.
said fraud, okay?
Sigmund Freud.
Fraud. Okay, but Freud didn't call him a fraud. It was,
Next year's
it was James. Yeah, that's the
The
yeah.
next week.
And you can do that one, Jack. Charles Dickens. It's a great comfort that we don't know. We don't know anything about him, and I'm shaking in fear that we will find out something that'll knock him off his perch. And other admirable men have lived lives in some sort of keeping with their thought, but that's man. Okay. This man was in wide contrast, because before, when I asked you the question, what did he need to know? Okay, and you were answering all these questions that nobles and that highly educated people knew. Okay, did the Stratford man know that? And we will get to it. Fear not. A famous, of course, it's by Mark Twain, so it's funny. A fabulous essay, I urge you to look it up, is Shakespeare Dead? And in it, he questioned Stratford's knowledge, his experience. He questioned everything. But he did it in his Twainian style. It's very interesting. So who was Shakespeare? Okay? Over the years, there have been many candidates proposed. And I'm just going to show you some of the top contenders. And of course, I will include Stratford. So just so you know, you can decide if they have the requisite knowledge, experience to be the bard, and then we will talk a little bit from there. Was he a she? Okay. Here is a leading contender, Mary Sidney Herbert. the Countess of Pembroke. Trained in rhetoric, scripture, fluent in Latin, French, politically outspoken. She developed and supported the literary circle of her day. Everybody who was anybody was part of her group. She published her brother Philip Sidney's sonnet sequence, and of course Shakespeare did write a few sonnets. She was the first woman to publish a play in English. However, it was a closet drama, meaning that it was performed in a private setting because nobles, and I'm going to go ahead and answer this question right now, nobles did not put their works on the stage, public stage, because commoners attended the public theater. So they performed them in-house amongst themselves. And she did. She's the first woman to publish a pastoral piece. Now here's a kind of cool thing, a little gossip. I like gossip. After her husband died, she fell in love with a young man. And she thought he was having an affair with her niece, who happened to have dark hair, dark eyes, kind of a dark lady. A little bit sonnet-esque. The first folio is dedicated to her two sons. Jonson's dedicatory poem in the first folio, okay, she says, this is dedicated to the memory of my beloved, the author. The author. Doesn't name a name. And then also, that makes sense because Jonson was one of her literary circle. And he also calls her the sweet swan. This is so hard. The sweet swan of Avon. Okay? Because the portrait, which you can't tell because it's blurry, sorry, has swans sewn into it. That was a famous portrait of hers. And she was known as the sweet swan. And she has a laurel wreath, which you can't tell, but it's up there, and she's holding a book. All of these things suggest that she was a writer. And by the way, she's buried by the Avon. The plot thickens. Oh, did she have the education and experience? She did, of course she did. Now I want to say something here. She traveled, and this I'll show you in the next one particularly. Santi.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When I saw your presentation, I was fascinated. He did a talk a couple of months ago of Sicily, and I watched that, and I said, here is a man who loves Sicily. I got that. You have traveled there and you've been there. You could write something set in Sicily. Perhaps not an entire play, I don't know, but you could write something. I watched that presentation, I took notes. I've read about Sicily, but I couldn't do that. I don't have your experience there. So that's important because a lot of Shakespeare's plays do imply at least that the person knows Italy. If not Europe, but Italy very well.
Maybe Santi wrote.
Maybe Santi. He's old enough.
Cut that from the tape.
I know Shakespeare.
And you're no Shakespeare.
And you know Shakespeare.
Here we have this is Mark Twain's favorite. Here, this guy is always toward the top of the list in terms of candidates. And you'll see why. Well-educated, well-traveled, served on the courts of two monarchs. Upon his death, I mentioned before how many scholars wrote anything at all for Stratford. 32 of his fellow scholars and members of the Inns of Court, which is simply, for lack of a better word, it's a legal club. It's a club for lawyers. They published eulogies citing his talent as the concealed poet and for uniting philosophy and drama, something that English teachers teach all the time, that Shakespeare did. He wrote many essays and treatises. This one bothers me, I'll tell you why. He's a contemporary of Shakespeare's. And he said, the world has not seen such an accomplished writer since it was a world. Now look at his dates. Contemporaneous with Stratford. Well, what in the world then did he say about Stratford if he says this about this guy? It's just something to think about. In Stratford, the monument compares the author to Nestor, Socrates, and Virgil, judge, philosopher, scholar, poet. Bacon was all of these, and he's often been associated with Love's Labour's Lost, which is set in France, in which he traveled in the French court. He actually did a lot of work in the French court. He went there as an ambassador. Okay? So he makes a pretty good candidate. Does he have the requisite knowledge and experience? Well, of course he does. Okay, I forgot to put Marlowe's dates up there. I'm sorry, but he died young. Christopher Kit Marlowe, famous playwright. He attended Cambridge on scholarship, and this gave him he became incredibly arrogant because of that, because all the rich kids went, but he got to go based on his brains. He was the first to translate Ovid's Amores into English. He was gifted in the use of blank verse, and anybody who's read Shakespeare, you know that's a big deal. His Dr. Faustus was produced while he was still a student. The guy was smart, really good playwright. His Tamerlane was performed just after that, and it was performed 200 times at least. That's a lot. That shows that Marlowe really controlled the stage, really owned the theater when he was cooking. When he was hot, he was hot. He became a spy as far as anyone knows. That's the prevalent theory, and it does have merit. He became a spy and traveled where? In Europe. Spied for her there. He wrote 7 plays, totally in blank verse. That's hard. It's a big deal. His early patron was the Earl of Pembroke, Mary Sidney's husband. This is big. 1593, he was suspected and questioned about heresy, which was a capital offense. Interestingly enough, within days of the charges, he died. Or did he? A lot of people are saying he staged his death, and then he moved out into the country, and he spent the rest of his life writing what? Shakespeare's plays. I find that is so speculative that I'm just putting it up there, but I really haven't seen anything that makes me think that that really is a valid theory. But it's there. A few more suspects. You're going to have to take my word for it on this because I don't have time to go into all of them. Fulk Greville, the Earl of Derby, and the Earl of Rutland. They all have the education. They all have the court insider knowledge. They all have the knowledge of the languages. They all have the travel. They all have everything. That we said with the falconry, what did you say? The law, the music, the da-da-da-da-da-da-da. They have all of that. So there are schools of thought around them. They all have their followers. Therefore, we have to take them into account. But you'll just have to trust me that they do have the education experience. But they're kind of minor players right now. So we'll go to some major players. Ed de Vere, the Earl of Oxford, okay? Extremely well educated, one of the most educated people of his day. Learned in, you name it, he knew it. He traveled extensively in Europe, particularly in Italy, and he stayed there for quite some time. And that's kind of a gossipy story. He was running away from his wife and father-in-law. It was self-imposed exile, so he chose to stay in Italy for quite a while. He knew Italy. He was actually he was referred to as the Italianate Elizabethan. He knew it so well. He maintained 2 theater companies. His marriage to William Cecil. William Cecil was Queen Elizabeth's right-hand man. He basically told her when to sit and when not to. So he was always at odds with Cecil, and a lot of scholars look at the Polonius Hamlet tug of war, and they also look at other of the plays. They look at Cecil's son, Robert, who, I don't want to offend anybody, but Robert Cecil was hunchbacked, and he had a club foot. And many people feel, and Oxford, and he hated each other, by the way. That's the records show. I mean, they hated. And Richard III, when Burbage, the actor, walks out on stage, it's possible that they were seeing Robert Cecil. And that was Oxford's kind of like, gotcha, to him. Shakespeare favored the Geneva Bible. We know that because his quotes were from the Geneva translation of the Bible. Oxford's copy has many notations that correspond to usage in the plays. And here's just a cool kind of note. It's a personal note for me. And Kathleen, thank you for helping me, and Honors and Debbie for putting me onto it. When I was at that conference in October, I got to hold in my hot little hands the Geneva Bible, Oxford's actual copy. And I kind of like to think that possibly it might have been Shakespeare's Bible. It's possible. It probably wasn't, but it was authentic. It was Oxford. There's speculation, more gossip. I love gossip. Speculation that he and Queen Elizabeth, the Virgin Queen, had an illegitimate son. Actually, during her lifetime, there were all kinds of rumors about her having illegitimate children. She stymied those. She stomped them, but the records still exist. It drove her crazy. It's hard to be the Virgin Queen and the mother of illegitimate children at the same time. I don't know. And there are too many more parallels to mention here. Did he have the education? Did he have the experience? Okay. Now we move to the new kid on the block, Thomas North. You can see, again, it's kind of the same, but all of them, all these nobles. He was very well educated, traveled extensively. He served as an envoy to France, and, by the way, the people that he dealt with in France showed up as characters in Love's Labour's Lost, just as a little tidbit. His translation of Plutarch's Lives did serve as the source. Nobody questions that. It served as the source of the author's Roman and Greek plays. He wrote plays to be presented in private settings, and what this would say if I were more competent and knew what I was doing. And it also says that the plots and things show up in William Shakespeare's canon as well. His life matches Prospero's in The Tempest. His daughter's life matches that of Rosamund in As You Like It, and the plots of All's Well That Ends Well. His life closely matches, we're going to get to this in a minute if I have time, this, gross worth of wit. It shows up there. It's there. It's just plopped right down into this document that's contemporaneous with the time. 1589, Thomas Nash called him the English Seneca. Guess what? Or said that the English Seneca was the author of Hamlet. North was called the English Seneca by Robert Greene, so he was known. It was known that he was the English Seneca. To Be or Not to Be came straight from North's works. He attended the revels. I'll get to that in a minute if I have a chance. These works showed up. The Earl of Leicester's estate. Shakespeare would have been 12. North attended. Oxford attended. They saw these revels. And they showed up almost verbatim in those two plays. He wrote Dial for Princes, or I think it's Dial of Princes, which was an advice to nobles. And a lot of it shows up as Polonius's, or looks very similar to Polonius's advice to his son. And there's lots more. Did he have the education? Did he have the experience? Oh. My mind went blank. And then I said, okay, let's not forget the leading contender. Here we have William Shakespeare, the Stratford lad. His father was, now I'm going to tell you why I put this on here. First of all, to fill up the page. But also, his father was a glove maker, magistrate, and mayor. Why do we care that he was a magistrate? Well, because as such, he adjudicated minor legal issues. In other words, it was like Judge Judy. He was kind of the Judge Judy of his day. Okay, nothing big, but as the mayor, okay, he might have received an invitation to attend Leicester's party, his festivities that I've talked to you about before. And if he did, he could have possibly maybe taken his son William with him. And as a 12-year-old lad, he would have been quite impressed with the show. And maybe would have then brought it to the theater later. All that's possible. He married Anne Hathaway, had a daughter a few months later. Okay, you can figure that one out. I've mentioned this for a reason. A couple of years later, he had 2 more children. They were twins. And then we don't hear a thing from him until right here. That's 7 years. That's a big gap. Stratfordians and everybody have filled in that gap with all sorts of possibilities. Maybe he traveled in Europe. Maybe he traveled to the New World. Maybe he was in a shipwreck. Maybe he did lots of things. Maybe. But he had 3 kids at home.
Oh, we know what he did there.
But he left 3 kids and went somewhere. Probably he left and went to London to make his way. In 1592, the first we hear about him is when he's attacked in the Groatsworth of Wit. Talked about, I said we'll get to that if we can. As the upstart crow. Now, Stratfordians will tell you that the writer, Robert Greene, was jealous of the Stratford lad. And that's why he called him an upstart crow who dresses himself, beautifies himself in others' feathers. There's another piece of thinking on that. Well, if we have time, we'll get to it. There's actually some indication in Groatsworth that he plagiarized or that he bought the works from playwrights at the time. There's considerable evidence. I hope we get to it. If not, I'll put it on a webpage if I can ever figure out how to do that. Look, you have no idea. I can't believe I'm even clicking a PowerPoint. He published 2 poems, which are based in mythology, so that's important. In 1597, he acquired that big house in Stratford. Local boy does well. He goes home and he buys a big house. So he had to be rich, Santi, to get back to your point. He had made a lot of money in the theater doing something. He was a shareholder in several acting companies, shareholder in the Globe. His plays were published in pamphlet and quarto format, some with his name, some without, and real cool. Hamlet, for example. Q1, the first quarto. It's a really short, butchered, really condensed down. It's called The Bad. Scholars across the world call that The Bad quarto. It's very scholarly. And then the Q2 was sort of corrections to that. That's called The Good quarto. And then in 1623, the first folio was published, and supposedly they took all of the bad out and all the good in, and they came up with a really scholarly issue. Did he have the education? We don't know, do we? He went to grammar school, and in grammar school, we're sure they taught a lot. Deb, I didn't get a chance to read what you just sent me today. She sends me stuff, and I'm like, I'm doing a PowerPoint in a minute. But I skimmed it, and it appears that there's new thinking that his grammar school education wasn't quite what it's been chalked up to be. I'm not ready to make that statement yet. I was just skimming. But it's out there. So maybe he did. Stratfordians tell us that the missing years could have been in traveling to Europe, that his father's position gave him access to better than average education, that his father may have taken him to the festival, and that he didn't write letters or put his thoughts in writing. That's why we don't have any scrap of paper except for those 6 signatures, because it was risky business to do that back then. Other people did it, but it was risky. And when he rode into town, he probably saw people with their heads on pikes. And how did those heads get there? Well, because they had put too much in writing. That's the Stratfordian claim. That his associations with nobility, however he had those, but he did, gave him access at court and insights into the lives of the nobility. We know he was an astute businessman. And there's no accounting for genius. I've saved that word for now. There are geniuses, geniuses in the world. And he was, maybe he was one of them. Maybe he had the prodigious memory, could just remember everything. It's possible. So far, what do you think? Yeah. Well, there's also a theory. No, there's also a theory. It's the group theory that 4 or 5 people sat around and wrote. We just don't have time for that one. But yeah, it's sort of like Agatha Christie. Murder on the Orient Express. Who did it? Everybody. Yeah. Okay. So now, do you think it's? See, I learned how to do clip art. So I did that for you. I know you couldn't care less, and I know it's stupid, but I was proud of myself for doing clip art. So there. Is it still a sacrilege to question Stratford's claim? It's just a question. I don't think so. And we're left then with the 2 heavyweights, Oxford and Stratford. Today, if you talk, yeah, I know more clip art. If you talk to scholars, basically you have the 2 camps. You still have Baconians, you still have Marlovians, you still have Sidneyans, but these are the 2 biggies. Okay?
Sallie, who is Oxford?
The Earl of Oxford, Ed de Vere. He was up there. You dozed. But there's somebody waiting in the wings. It's the new kid on the block. And I'm still working on the research there. He has a lot going for him. I love that gross worth of wit. It's his life story. It is his life story. And who knows, as his devotees come to the forefront, it's going to make for interesting discussions. The ring's going to get crowded with these fighters, let's put it that way. And they're vicious. This is not just, academic, saying, oh, no. I mean, they're like, you think it's Stratford? How stupid can you be? And then you say to him, you think it's Oxford? What, were you born yesterday? You don't know nothing? So no, I don't think, and I don't mean to plant, but I don't think it's a sacrilege, and I think we need to be talking about this. And when I teach my classes, I never teach Stratford only. And I teach Oxford as well. And I say, how does it affect your reading of the play? Well, it does. If Stratford wrote it, you read it one way. If Oxford wrote it, then you look at his political intrigue, you look at Burleigh, you look at the Cecils, and you look at all of that, and you say, wow, that's cool. He was really slapping it too. But his contemporaries, this didn't start now, I told you that before. His contemporaries had something to say. We're nearly done, okay? But his contemporaries spoke about it. And I want to hear what they had to say. Because we can sit here all day and say, well, they knew him. Gross worth of wit. Here's the major quote here. And this has been quoted by everybody, that everybody believes that the upstart crow was Shakespeare. You have to accept that. It's a given. There's an upstart crow, beautified with our feathers, that with his tiger's heart wrapped in a player's hide. That's a quote from Henry VI, Part 3. That's what identifies it with Shakespeare's play. Supposes he's as well able to bombast out a blank verse as the best of you. Who's you? Well, in Gross worth of wit, there are 4 people. There's the starving scholar, which is North's life story, by the way. And then there are 3 playwrights. There are 3 others. Marlowe, Peele, and Green himself, the writer of this. And they're all saying, Green's writing to himself, too. He said, don't let him do this. Okay? He's a jack of all, Johnny Factor, a jack of all trades. Actor. Okay? And who figures himself the only shake scene in a country. Shake scene. It's hyphenated, and that's another tip-off, because Shakespeare often hyphenated his name. We're supposed to know this is Shakespeare. Good satire does that, right? Good satire clues the audience. The audience of the day, the people reading this, would have known. They knew who this was about. Oh, that I might entreat you rare wits to be employed, the bold is mine, to be employed in more profitable courses, never more acquaint them with your admired inventions. Now then, that in and of itself does not tell us that Shakespeare bought the plays from these playwrights. But you see, that's what people don't tell you. That's why they only quote from this. And it's just saying, he just thinks he's just arrogant. He's not one of you, and he's not as good as you.
Did you say Shakespeare hyphenated his name?
What's that? Yes. In some of his writings he did, yes.
But he did not have any writings.
In his, good point. In one of his signatures and on the title pages. So we assume that he approved the hyphenating when he did. Because on the title pages, but you're absolutely right, says one of my students. Yes, that we don't have much by him. But on the title pages, yes. So we assume he approved it. This is all you see. This morning when I got up, I fast forwarded up and I read the beginning again. And it starts out with a story that is absolutely down to the most minute detail. The story of Thomas North. Down to the most minute detail. Now, here's the cool part of that. Thomas North, the starving scholar in Gross Worth of Wit. Well, he's been booted from his family. He's starving. He's broke. Okay, his brother has disinherited. Everything's gone against him. But he's a brilliant. He's a scholar. And he's standing on the side of the road, and he goes, "Dang it, I'm broke." He probably said it more. "Dang it, I'm broke. What am I going to do?" And then there is this rich actor hiding in the bushes, because this is a satire. So of course he's hiding in the bushes. He jumps out and he says, "You're broke? You're a scholar? I can help you." And the scholar says, "How?" He says, "I hear you have what? Plays for sale. Now you're an upstart crow." And he says the other playwrights sold plays too. Now you're calling Shakespeare, if not plagiarizer, at least he bought his works. That's what they're saying. Is that an accurate portrayal? I don't know. As I said, I'm just starting looking at North. It looks very promising, though. If you just read the contemporaneous works. And here's what's really cool about it, is that the author gives us enough textual clues to let us know who he's talking about. Ben Jonson, Ben Jonson, contemporary, wonderful playwright. In all three of these works, you have characters who do what? They buy or steal works from scholars and then pass them off as their own. He gave textual clues as well as to who he's talking about. Shakespeare. And the North connection here is not quite as sound, but you can make the connection. So it's kind of interesting. So it goes way back. And then over the years, others have added their questions and their scholarship. And then what happens? We come to 1987. The Supreme Court heard the case of Stratford versus Oxford. Okay? They ruled against Oxford only because, or I should just say, because they didn't meet the burden of proof, or they didn't feel that they did. But 2 of the 3 voiced serious doubt. That's my clip art. Okay, well, I didn't even know this one. Look at that. I kind of like it. So, here's what we know, and then we're at the end. I know you'll be happy. But here's what we know that Stratford wrote. We know this. If we know anything, we figure he wrote this. "Good friend, for Jesus' sake, forbear to dig the dust and close it here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones." It's almost silly if you think about it. the great mind of the century, and this is what he writes. To me, it's a far cry from this. To die, to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say we end. It's a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep? Perchance to dream, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause.
How do we know he wrote that?
That's a good question. Because there is an entry in a diary by the engraver's uncle's brother, something like that, a third or fourth reference that Shakespeare wrote that.
And when did he write it?
Well, obviously before.
Wasn't feeling well?
Before he died.
That was before he died, yes.
Before he came back.
Not when he was a remedial student.
No. But this, obviously, wrote when he had gotten some chops, and had gotten some experience. That's what we're going to say. So the mystery, who done it? Who was the soul of the age, the bard, the sweet swan of Avon, who wrote the works? It's a work in progress, and it will be. There's no smoking gun right now. There's nothing that says definitively, here's the author. But here's the point. It's money, and it's prestige. And as long as those two things are in play, you're going to have this whodunit. And what I did was I made some copies, if you're interested, of just a few of the works here for the various, for Stratford, for Bacon, Sydney, Marlowe, Oxford, and North. But just a few references that you can take with you if you want. When I do ever learn how to create a web page or something like whatever it is, a website or web page, I'll put all of this on there for you, and you're welcome to contact me at any time. But that's it. So thank you.